And we are back. We are back for another edition of Black Tower Radio. I'm your host, Jake Fox, and we are broadcasting live on 1040 AM, 92.1 FM, WYSL in Rochester, New York. Also on worldnewsradio.today. That's worldnewsradio.today. We are joined here today by Lynette Zang. Lynette Zang is the Chief Market Strategist at itmtrading.com. She does numerous interviews all over the web. Very, very intriguing stuff that she covers. Topics that we cover here on Black Tower Radio. Central banking, market manipulation, gold and silver suppression. You know, she covers the whole gambit. And she's here today to discuss some topics that I know are near and dear to Black Tower Radio fans' hearts. Welcome to the show, Lynette.
Thank you for having me, Jake. This is fun.
All right, so Lynette, you recently broke a story that the dollar is about to be replaced by a basket of currencies called the SDR, Special Drawing Rights. You know, how is this going to go down? I mean, we see the dollar attacked all the time by foreign countries. I mean, I could list all of the events that have brought us here to today, but that would be a long, rambling series of events. But so how is this going to play out? Who's going to be pulling the lever? What's going on here, Lynette?
Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit to move forward. And since you're familiar, and your listeners are probably familiar with the IMF, you might recall that after the crisis in 2008, China called for reviving the SDR, which is the internal money of the IMF created in '69 to take over as the world reserve currency back in '71 when we almost lost the status. But everything had been put to bed. So once the crisis hit in 2008, China was brought up the SDRs, and everybody has them. And I thought, well, that makes all the sense in the world. And then in 2011, the IMF came out with an outline and a template on what their goals were and how they would roll out the SDR and take over the reserve status. And one of the ways, now China was selected to spearhead that move, so you probably remember when they issued the first SDR or tradable SDR-denominated bond in August of 2016. Then they were inserted into the basket in 2000 in October of that same year, which was the first time the basket had been changed since early 1980s. And their job was to create a market for the SDR. Well, in May of this year, they finally began to execute the next part of their plan. In their outline, they said really clearly that they needed to have global monetary reform, so that means the system died in 2008, and they needed to come up, and they've said this numerous times anyway, we need to have a money standard shift, and they also need to get us away from cash. So their plan was to create a tradable SDR market, and that was China's job. And then also part of their plan was to be the global unit of account, which means that all assets would be valued in terms of SDRs, which, as I'm sure you know, right now they're all valued in terms of dollars. And then finally, they wanted all currencies to be pegged to the SDR. And at the moment, you've got roughly 50%-ish of the currencies pegged to the euro dollar, and the other 50% of the currencies pegged to the U.S. dollar. Well, no, they want all currencies to be pegged to the SDR. So that's what they outlined in their plan in 2011. And then again, China's job was to do this. So they brought out the bond, and now in April of this year, they brought out a cryptocurrency. It's called ACC Chain, and ACC stands for Asset Collection Chain. And what they are doing is digitizing all tangible assets. So they started to do it. They introduced it in the U.S. In Texas, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. But the very first one that they did in May of this, or actually in June of this year, was they had a whole bunch of tea, roughly, I think it was something like $50 million worth of tea, and they held it in a warehouse in China, and then they digitized it. In other words, just turned it, created digits, and then turned it into a token, and then sold that tea in an ICO, an initial coin offering. Now they've come to, this is going on right now, they came to somewhere outside of Dallas, bought about 900 acres of property. This is a company out of Singapore. Bought about 900 acres of property and are putting in a development. And they have taken $50 million worth of that land and turned it into a token, which is in process of being sold right now. But here's where the SDR comes in. The token's name is ACC. If you can only buy that token with a Bitcoin or Ethereum, and when you do, they marry, so Bitcoin would marry to ACC, and that turns into an SDR token. Did you follow that? It's a little complicated. I mean, I know that it's hard to see. I wish we had visuals because they give you great visuals. And I would encourage all of your listeners to go to the ACC Chain YouTube site and look at their videos. They are really chilling. And and look at them very closely because they have a lot of things in there that are scared the heck out of me, I'll say that.
This sounds like a multi-pronged attack. Not only is the dollar being attacked, but so is all paper currency, it seems.
Well, right. They don't want you to have paper because the problem is debt. And it was back in 97 is when we hit peak debt. And that doesn't mean the highest level of debt. What that means to me is that it was already at 97. After that, we lost the ability of growing debt to stimulate the economy. You can see that on the monetary velocity charts. Ever since then, no matter how much debt we grew, the monetary velocity just continues to decline. So once we hit that at 97, what do bankers know? Bankers are part of this. I mean, they are the system. They know debt and they know leverage. So that's when they really ramped up the speculative derivatives, which is just leveraging debt. I mean, that's all that is until 2008 when it crashed. So when you talk about the dollar, what is the dollar? What supports a dollar? The ability to grow constantly compounding debt. Well, if the constantly compounding debt is also supposed to be creating constantly compounding inflation. Well, according to the Federal Reserve, and I'll assume this number is right, out of the original dollar's value in terms of purchasing power, there's 4 cents left. And you've got 90% of the industrialized world anchored somewhere near zero with what, about 30 or 40%? I haven't checked just lately. but 30 to 40% of the debt being issued in Europe, in Switzerland, in Japan, that is in negative rates. Well, the dollar and any fiat currency, any money, actually puts restrictions on how low below zero the central bankers can actually push interest rates. And they've been testing it in all those places that are issuing interest rates. In fact, I just got 2 days ago, but I have not had a chance to look at it yet, a report from the IMF on the results of their findings about negative rates. So they have to get rid of cash, because cash is actually a debt instrument that has a zero interest rate. You don't pay interest on it, and you don't receive interest on it. But it is a debt instrument. Look at the bill, Federal Reserve note. That's debt. So the dollar, your ability to go into the bank, if they start charging you interest to hold it there, what are you most likely to do? Pull it out to try and preserve your principal. Okay, well, then that means that they can't push the rates lower. So the IMF came out with a report in December of 2015, breaking below the lower zero bound, where they came up with some wonderful ideas of how to get rid of it. So all of these reports, they're telling you what they're doing. It's just that, oh gosh, that was 2011, so who would equate that with what's happening in 2017? Or that was 2015, how would you equate that? When all of these things are interconnected. And a dollar, I mean it's nothing. It only has value because you give it value. It's not real money. It's just a tool of barter. It doesn't hold your wealth. The moment you get it in your hands, it has the highest level of purchasing power. We all know that. What do you buy today that you bought a year ago? That's, everything costs you more. That's the whole plan. That's the way the fiat money works.
So with Beijing, China, SDRs, ACC, Bitcoin, this whole scenario that's playing out, is that why Christine Lagarde said recently that she could see the IMF being headquartered in Beijing in the next 20 years?
Absolutely, because by their own rules, they have to be housed in the country that contributes the most to global GDP, and the baton has been passed to China. So, yep, that's why, exactly.
So what would a situation like this look like for America in terms of its markets, dollar value, the whole gambit?
Well, first of all, since the dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the government, okay, and people don't really trust the government these days. I mean, I think according to the most current Gallup poll, 6% of the country trusts Congress?
Yeah.
They need it to go into a quote-unquote trustless. I mean, it's insidious. But what it looks like is once the dollar has lost that global status, in other words, countries now would have to, including ours, we become a local currency, and we'd have to convert to SDRs in order to buy things outside of our borders. All those dollars that are held overseas will no longer be needed. So they are coming home to roost, and that's what will create the hyperinflation. The markets, I believe we've already started melt-up mode. I've never seen markets this rigid. You cannot even have a 4% correction, because if you did, Deutsche Bank would be insolvent, and they have the largest derivative book of all of the banks on the planet. JP Morgan is second, and so that would trigger an event. So, I believe that we've entered melt-up mode, similar to what we saw in Venezuela, where the markets can now, it would not surprise me to see the markets go to 50,000, but like Venezuela, there's no buyers on the other side of these markets. The Treasury Department has been telling us since 2013 that these markets are actually not liquid. What's the liquidity in there? It's all the new money that all the global central banks are pumping out. But what are they doing with that money? They're buying mortgage-backed securities to support that market. They're buying government debt to support those markets. All this talk about rolling off the balance sheets. Well, they might do it because they're that arrogant, but I don't see it because those markets fall apart and everything implodes. So until they're ready for that crisis, and keep in mind, too, people always make the assumption that they want to keep this stuff going forever. But they are very well aware that the system died in 2008 and has just been on life support till they got the new money standard in place. Okay? So, and the IMF tells us we need a really, really big crisis to conclude this transition. Now, going back to the ACC coin, its design is to hold the title of every single tangible asset out there. They have only begun. But if the perception is that there are tangibles backing that ACC coin, when we enter that next really scary crisis, whatever wealth is not in the markets and frozen, if it flies to safety, where's it going to go? Probably to the ACC coin.
That's interesting.
And done. You know, they now have global. If they can pull this off, and if a lot of us know about this, and that's why I'm talking about it so much. But we've just started. I just found out about this recently. One of my viewers sent me a link and said, "Would you please look at this?" And I look at everything that my viewers send me, and then I could determine how much time I want to spend on it. But when I saw that, I went, holy crap, this is what I've been looking for. And the IMF, nothing on their website about it, not one thing. They are dead silent on it. And yet, the ACC chain is touting the SDR as the world currency, that all other currencies become local, including the U.S. dollar. It is just a local currency. And mission accomplished. Their outline that they laid out in 2011, done. But it's not done yet, so we still have a chance, but only if a lot of people are aware of it. And they know that a lot of people are aware of it, then they know they can't pull it off. I hope.
So this is like a collective blackout of this whole idea and plan. I mean, you're not going to hear about this on CNBC or Fox Business. I mean, I'm assuming all of these guys know what's happening, but we're just not being told about it by anyone.
I don't think they know what's happening. I looked for it, and I didn't know that it happened in May. Well, it was May 23rd, okay? And I look for that a lot because I've been tracking the SDR forever. So I don't think they know about it. So no, you're not going to hear about it. Even if they knew about it, you wouldn't, but I don't think they know about it.
It's interesting. Well,
no, it's really interesting. And we think, the cryptocurrencies, and I know that's the direction that we're going in, and I'm accepting it. It also means I'm going to understand it as much as I possibly can understand it. But where the original Bitcoin came out so that it was anonymous and it was outside of the system and all of this, well, look at how much money the big banks and the corporations and the governments and the central bankers have put into this blockchain technology. It is an anonymous system. We don't know who owns the nodes, which is what controls all this stuff. And when you look at the diagrams in ACC, everything, 100% of everything flows through the SDR. This is not out of the system. This is the system. But the difference is now, since it's anonymous, you have no idea who's really pulling the strings. And there is absolutely no recourse. I mean, according to their documents, The Chinese node, so the nodes are what everything flows through. The Chinese supernode has already been discovered. Well, of course, they created the ACC coin. They're the first to the party. That makes sense. But the U.S. node has been discovered. Well, who discovered that node? Who knows? I mean, there's 72,000 pages of ICO coins being purchased, but it's all in code. I couldn't tell a thing from it, right? That's the point of it. So I don't know who owns it. Is it somebody in the U.S. that owns it? Is the Federal Reserve that owns it? Or is it the Chinese government that owns it? Who knows? I don't know. So we think we're getting out of the system when we go into cryptos, and oh, no, 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 no. We are falling right into what they want us to do. Get comfortable holding 100% of everything in cyberspace and giving up 100% control. That's what they want. That's what they're doing.
This almost sounds like the movie, I don't know if you've seen this movie, Lynette, The Sausage Party. I
haven't. Well, it sounds like one I should.
It's a cartoon where all of the grocery store foods are personified, basically, and they all have this religious belief that when they get selected in the supermarket aisle, that they eventually go to this food nirvana where they all enjoy the rest of their lives, but really they're going to someone's home and they're going to be chopped up and eaten. And that's kind of like what we're dealing with here. We all think we're being freed from this system, but in actuality, we're going into a much deeper sort of hell.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
In fact, the one of the images that comes up when you go to their ACC YouTube channel and you look at their introductory videos, there is this guy, a cyber guy, that's running. And you see gold coins of different kinds come up, and he's running nice and steady, but not real fast. And then you see the Chinese yuan come up and the U.S. dollar come up, and he's running much faster. But the caption underneath there says, and I don't have this in front of me, so it's not a direct quote, but it says something like, blockchain. The devil uses it to enslave the world. And then the rest of the fiat money comes up, and it says, and the gods use it for the benefit of all, or something like that. But they actually said in there that the devil uses it to enslave the world. And then you have this robot hand come up, hit the huge $100 bill that's in the middle, and throw all that away. And then you go into all of these lines because now everything's in cyberspace. It is freaky. It is freaky to watch this material. Please do yourself a favor, watch it.
I found it interesting what you said about the next financial meltdown and what it'll look like, excuse me, for a man on the street. And this is on your ITMtrading.com blog. You say the Bank for International this is from July 1st. The Bank for International Settlements showed how they would bail in the banks over the weekend. It's pretty easy to see if you look across the pond to Greece. You'll have no access to your wealth. You may have a pretty easy to see if you look. Oh, I'm sorry. You may have a pretty statement that says you have XYZ stocks in there. You just can't touch it. It will be the same thing with your bank account. Basically, access will be gone. So that's what it's going to look like to the average American.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in Cyprus, they just, that was the first quote-unquote bail-in, and that was 2013, and they just gained access to their accounts not that long ago. I don't even think it's been a year. From 2013. So you might have gotten a pretty statement, and of course, anything that was above the, Cyprus and Greece, all of this, but Cyprus was the first one to kick it off. And if you look at the graphs, you see that There was a lot of money from the European different banks in Europe that bought into the Cyprus Bank CDs and all of that. And it peaked, I think, in like 2011 or 12. And then it dropped off dramatically, while the normal Cypriots were just nice and steady and stayed in there and stayed in there and stayed in there. And then when they decided to bail in the Cypriot banks was because they had all this Greek debt that they were forced to buy when they joined the European Union. Who didn't know there was a problem in Greece by 2011, 2012? Okay, but the Cypriots, the public didn't know. The other banks in Europe did. They got the Hades out of there. And if you look at my work, you can see those charts. And if you want them, anybody can call, and I'm happy to send them to you. But, you know, it's like, what do the insiders know that you don't? That's what I pay a lot of attention to, is what are the guys that know the most about this stuff doing for themselves? And then when I can emulate that, I do. Well, every Wednesday I do an insider trading corner. I'm going to do one today. And if you look at the Wall Street Journal, they're getting out in droves. For every $1 in buy, I think this week it's something like 66 in general, $66.04 in sells. But I'm also doing Netflix as an individual chart. And, of course, if you look at the Netflix chart, I believe that it's something like, you can't hold me to this, but something like zero buying of the stock and something like 25,000 in selling of the stock. So the insiders are getting out of these stock markets. And the markets have been manipulated up. So that's all the normal guy sees is, hey, the market's doing great. Yay, party on, party on. Well, the real fundamentals don't support that market. It's all driven by the central banks and all their shenanigans and the stock buybacks and all the things that you guys, you know, talk about all the time. But the insiders are selling out in droves. Well, I don't know. You think the board at Netflix knows something you don't know? Because I'm thinking they do. So when I look at the gold purchases, I mean, that's what I do. I go a little below the surface, and sometimes I go really deep below the surface, but I always start just a little below the surface, because when you look at things just a little bit differently, it's amazing at what you see. If the insiders are getting out of this market, why are you staying in it? That's how the wealth transfers. And when these markets are this rigid, and the Bank for International Settlements is showing you how they're going to transfer your wealth to the banks over the weekend, and you'll have no access to it, but they'll leave you a whole bunch of stock in the failing institution. Thank you very much, eminent domain. But who values that stock? I mean, that's what the bail-in is. They just, because it's not really your money, it's your assumption and your perception that it's your money. But once you make that deposit, it's actually theirs legally. So they just had to finalize it because the bank doesn't want to pay you back or won't be able to pay you back. Now, you might still get that pretty statement, but it doesn't mean anything if you can't access it. So, yeah, the common man is going to be in not great shape. In fact, in abject poverty. Look at Venezuela. That's what it looks like.
Like you said regarding all the bigwigs getting out of the stock market and the central bank shenanigans, propping it up. I mean, I just saw an article today about how the Swiss central bank owns $84 billion in U.S. stocks. I mean, this is all a shell game. They're just,
yes, it is.
It's crazy. You know, the stock market is imaginary. You know, I don't know what percentage of our money is in there.
Well, you know, I was a stockbroker in Black Monday in '87, and I was just a newbie then, about a year into it, and it was the best day I could have ever been a stockbroker, frankly, because I know what that looks like. But that's when they started the plunge protection team. And right around and that was to keep the market supported, because this is a con game. And it's all about confidence. So you notice that they always talk about consumer confidence. Confidence, confidence, confidence. Well, yeah, because we have to have confidence in the money. We have to have confidence in the markets. We have to have confidence in the banking system. We have to have confidence in our government. We have to have confidence for them to keep this going. But the reality is, so much changed in the mid to late 90s with, and that's right when we hit that peak debt level. But right after that is also when all of these quote-unquote sovereign wealth funds started to come about. Well, what's a sovereign wealth fund? Well, that's the government excess money that they can then put wherever. So yes, you're right about the Swiss central bank, but also look at the Japanese central bank. They own most of the Nikkei, right? All of these central banks, all these sovereign wealth funds, I mean, there are so many layers of all of this manipulation. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Why anybody would hold any wealth in there is beyond me. I don't have a dime in those markets. Not a dime. And I keep a minimum amount in the bank. Nope. I like my tangibles, and I like them close.
So how do you see gold and silver reacting to all of this down the road chaos?
Well, you know, in a reset circumstance, this is how a central bank performs a reset. It's also how markets might perform a reset. If you look at, again, I'll go back to Venezuela. It was 169 bolivars for an ounce of gold, you know, give or take, for a very long time. And then in 2011, they confiscated the monetary gold. And then about a year later is when the hyperinflation started to kick in. In 2013, they had the best performing stock market in the world. There are articles about how great this frickin' stock market is because it was in melt-up mode. But then in 2014, it plummeted because, guess what? People discovered the scam. They tried to get out. There's no liquidity in these markets. Now, gold, on the other hand, about a year ago-ish, when I checked it, from 169 bolivars, which the average person could afford, it was at 1.5 million bolivars. When I checked it on June 28th, it was at 10 million bolivars. Now that sounds like, woo, 10 million bolivars. But the bolivar has more value as a napkin for an empanada because you can't buy anything with it. And then, of course, you know, they demonetized a whole bunch of it in November. But 90% of the population there is in abject poverty. Notice I did not say 100%, because they did not confiscate the collectible gold coins. And in fact, we recently had one of our clients has family in Venezuela, and they sent up a couple of gold collectible coins for us to liquidate so that he could get them back dollars so that they could function. But there's a lot of property transfer that's going on down there right now with gold, buying up massive estates for virtually nothing. So that's how gold behaves. They reset the currency, which has no intrinsic value. It's used one place, against gold that is all intrinsic value. It's used in every aspect of our economy. It's used in manufacturing as well as the monetary system, even some food, although I don't know that I'd want to eat gold, but it is used there. And so gold always has demand because there's always a use for it. And they revalue the fiat money against gold, and then gold rises to its fundamental value. Right now, that's somewhere north of $9,300 an ounce. Even though we're seeing gold, at what, 1270, 1269, something like that at the moment. So if they did the reset today, that's what you would see happen to gold, and silver is somewhere north of, I think, 620 or something like that. I can't tell you what that number is going to be when they do the reset, but that's how they do the reset. So that's how gold and silver both respond. That's why that's where you hold your wealth. Then when those other assets, like what's happening in Venezuela, when those income-producing assets or other assets are somewhere near a bottom, then you take your gold and you convert them into those other assets when they're cheap. Right now in this country, all that stuff is way overvalued. So this is not the time to buy that kind of thing. Although you always have to have a place to live, so I'm not saying you shouldn't buy real estate. But certainly not for speculation. And you're certainly buying it somewhere near a market top. So that's how gold and silver behave. They go to their true value, or at least somewhere near it.
So during this gold, silver reset / financial crisis, do you think this is going to be a controlled demolition, or have they lost control?
Well, I'll tell you, when you look at things as much as I have, things that you think were a shocking surprise typically aren't. So if they can pull this off, what they want is they want as little visibility around it as possible. That's why the IMF is not talking about the ACC coin and the SDR coin. They're dead silent on it. So if they can maintain control, then they might be able to conclude that money standard shift. But that history tells us a different story. There's always a tremendous amount of chaos around a money standard shift, and for those of us that are my age, I'm 62, so I remember really well 1971 when we shifted from a at least partially gold standard-backed currency to a pure debt-backed standard. And I'm sure anybody alive then will remember the Vietnam War. I mean, we were funding the Vietnam War, the high inflation, the stock markets imploded 45%. You had women's lib, you had civil rights, you had the oil embargo. I mean, there was a lot of chaos. All of the protests. My sister was actually billy clubbed at Kent State. So, there was a lot of chaos, and that's typically what happens around a money standard shift. And like the IMF has said, they need a really big crisis to conclude the transition from the dollar standard to the SDR standard. If they have their druthers, it will be more than just an SDR standard. It will be a blockchain technology with a smart contract overlay, which means that the money itself will automatically execute any contract that they've written in there. So one of the examples that they actually used was with a vehicle and with a car, and let's say that you missed your auto payment. Well, guess what? The automobile is, bam, the contract actually dismantles or makes it impossible for you to drive that vehicle. And with autonomous driving, heck, if you don't make that payment within a certain period of time, maybe they'll just drive the car right away. And remember, in that blockchain technology, title is transferred instantly. So that's where they want to take us. They don't want us to own anything. Not at all. That's the whole point of those SDR coins, holding title to all of the physical wealth that there is. And that's the standard that they want to shift us to. So no, I don't really think it'll be orderly. I don't think they want it to be orderly. They just want us to be naive until the crisis hits. And then it's too late. Once it becomes visible, it's too late.
I mean, being objective is possible here, and keeping my emotions out of this statement. What a brilliant plan. This is
genius.
It's amazing. It's
Yep.
they're it's this Pied Piper situation. They're having us fall off the cliff, thinking we're following some liberation or something. It's crazy. It's not even Orwellian. It's this whole new deception. I don't. There's no title for it. It's a brilliant criminal scheme. You got to give them credit.
I do. They're genius. They know how to do this. The way that they do it, and stop and think about this too. Like prior to 1913, a 20th of an ounce of gold backed a $1 bill. When they legalized the Federal Reserve at the end of that year, a 20th of an ounce of gold backed $2.40. So the Federal Reserve printed almost 2.5 times the amount of money based upon the gold held in deep storage. Now, purchasing power declined, according to the Federal Reserve, purchasing power declined by about 50%. So I have all the evidence of this. I don't make a statement that I can't back up, or I will tell you this is just my opinion. But if I don't say this is just my opinion, you want the links, I'm happy to provide them. But when they did that, they did not want anybody to know that anything had changed. So they left the barter ratio and the convertibility of dollars into gold exactly the same. So while they lost 50% of their purchasing power, the average income more than tripled. Well, I don't know. If your income triples but your costs only doubled, do you really care that your costs doubled? Probably not. And then you had your roaring 20s. Happy days are here again. They lulled everybody into a false sense of security. Those markets were going up. They started to participate. The insiders got out. Liquidity dried up. And we know, and then they used that crisis to take the only tool that we as citizens had, the gold, away from us so that they could conduct the rest of the plan. Now let's jump forward to 1971. If you had a dollar bill in your pocket in July of 1971, and you had a dollar bill in your pocket in September of 1971, well, one had some gold behind it, the other had just debt. Did you know it? Because I didn't know it. But look at what happened in the 1980s. The 1980s is really this currency's iteration of what happened in the 20s. So they want you to feel all that inflation made a lot of people feel like they had like money. And then, but if you look at the purchasing power and the loss of the purchasing power, you just, pardon me, screwed. 4 cents left. Officially, that's official.
They've squeezed
everything. So yeah,
everything.
they're genius. I agree.
Yeah, they squeezed everything out of that rock, didn't they? That was pretty amazing.
Right. So now they have to take your principal. That's what the negative rates are about. They attack your principal. And getting you to give up the dollar bill, that physical piece of paper, even though it has 4 cents of value left in it, it still prohibits them from going too far below zero. And they actually say in that breaking below the lower zero bound, you can Google it, IMF report, read it. It's an easy read, and it'll blow your mind. Read it twice. But they say that once they get rid of cash, then there are no limits to how low they can push interest rates. That means no limits to how quickly they can make your principal evaporate. And if you're in the system, which that's what they want, and you see your principal evaporating, what are you most likely to do? Go spend it to try and hold on to whatever level of purchasing power you can keep. Well, that's what hyperinflation is. As soon as you get any money in your hands, you go spend it because you know it's losing value rapidly. So there are different ways of creating that hyperinflation and what it's going to look like, but the end result is the same. The system has to reset. And now they need all of the wealth to do it. And that's what that ACC coin is about, that SDR coin, to hold every single physical, tangible asset. They're letting the banks take care of the stock and the bond market and digitizing that. Big deal. That's already Ether anyway. But it's the real stuff that has also been securitized, but it's the real stuff. I'm sitting on a chair. They want to digitize that chair. They want to own everything.
It sounds similar to what the Soviet Union used to do with food. They would create artificial food scares, to keep people in line. They're doing this with money and interest rates. It's interesting. It's fascinating.
And threatening your Social Security, which isn't really there anyway. It's been running deficits since 2007, right? So, yes, that's exactly what they do.
Lynette Zang, Chief Market Strategist at ITMTrading.com. Go to ITMTrading.com. It's a fascinating site. Especially go to Lynette's blog. She has a whole host of interviews on there, and it's updated. Lynette, I'd love to give you the floor to plug any project you have coming up or give any message to the people. You got it.
Well, thank you. Actually, most of the work you'll find on our YouTube channel, which is YouTube.com/ITM Trading. And we post things on there constantly. Every week I do a research report, insider trading, and then we have a Q&A typically on Thursdays based upon whatever I did on Tuesdays. Plus, what makes us different here is that we really work together as a team here. So all of our team members, we all pay attention, and we all help each other understand all of this. And we have a strategy that's based upon repeatable patterns and valuations, and then it's based upon an individual client's needs and circumstances. So we really take, I think, a very comprehensive approach on helping you build out a portfolio and understanding everything. We're huge on education, and the education is free because we really strongly believe in that. And I think you'll find that if you call in to, can I say it, 888-696-4653, and talk to any of our team members. I'm certain you'll be very impressed.
You got it.
I'm proud of us.
Thank you very much, Lynette, for coming on the show. And I would suggest to go to ITM Trading. They're good people over there. I haven't heard anything bad about ITM Trading or Lynette. She's a good lady. I've talked to her.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Lynette, for coming on the show, and we'd love to have you back on again in the future.
Well, thank you, Jake. Yeah, just let us know. I'd be happy to do it.
Great. Have a good day, Lynette.
You too. Bye-bye.
And that was Lynette Zang of ITMTrading.com. We will be right back with Ken Klippenstein of Shadowproof.com, newly minted staffer over at Shadowproof. So stay tuned for that. We will be right back with Ken Klippenstein of Shadowproof.com.